All right, hello, math fans. All right, so today we're going to work on adding and subtracting. So adding and subtracting fractions. All right. The deal is with multiplication and division, you could just multiply them together. Remember, we just had to cross-cancel numbers. Well, adding and subtracting is a little more complicated. And the reason it's a little more complicated is because you need a common denominator. That is huge. Okay, got to have a common denominator. And so let's kind of start out with one that has a common denominator already and just kind of talk a little bit about it because just, I don't know, refresh your brain a little bit. So this is always my favorite. If you have 1/2 plus 1/2. Now, hopefully most of you guys know how to do this, but this is like a really bad thing to do. A bad thing to do is you add the tops and you add the bottoms together. Because this is what happens. If you add the tops together, you get 1 plus 1 is 2. And you add the bottoms together, you get 2 plus 2 is 4. And then you reduce 2/4 is 1/2. So does that make sense? 1/2 plus 1/2 is equal to 1/2. Boo! Okay, that's wrong. So you don't do that. The deal is you need a common denominator. Once you have the common denominator, that stays the same. So let's go back to that problem. 1/2 plus 1/2. So that stays the same. You have a 2 on the bottom, and then you add the top. So this you add or subtract depending on what the sign is. Okay, so 1 plus 1 is 2. And then remember, always reduce. So 2 over 2 is 1 whole, or just 1. All right? That's what you do. You need a common denominator. So, again, I can say, 5/7 plus 10/7. Put the 7 stays on the bottom. 5 plus 10 is 15. And remember, you don't need to simplify it all unless you can reduce the fraction, you do that. But otherwise, you can leave it as an improper fraction. Okay? You don't need to turn into a mixed number and say that's, because this is definitely equivalent to 2 1/7. But you don't even need to say that. 15/7 is perfect for what I'm looking for. Okay? So that's not bad, right? Let's do one more. 7/4 minus 5/4. Okay, a little subtraction, that's easy. So again, the 4 is common, so that's good. 7 minus 5 is 2, and 2/4 reduces to 1/2. That's it, okay? That's pretty nice. Now, the work gets a little difficult is when you don't have a common denominator. All right, and I'm going to start out with 1/2 plus 1/3. Now, I know you guys learned getting a common denominator in junior high or middle school or whatever, but I'm going to show you a way that really is pretty easy to figure out. Okay, basically what you have to do is you got to find your lowest common denominator, or LCD. Sometimes they say at least common denominator. And the question is, what number does both 2 and 3 go into? What's the smallest number? That's what they mean by least common denominator. And so 2 goes into 6 and 3 goes into 6 evenly. So 6 is the smallest number they both go into. That is my LCD. Okay? So what I need to do is I need to convert both of those numbers, both the 1/2 and the 1/3, into so many sixths. Okay? So this is the deal. And again, I don't know how you learned it, but this is so easy. If I ask you 2 times what gives you 6, and you tell me 3. So definitely you put a 3. Well, I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by 3. And I want to see this work, guys. And you're like, well, how can you just do that? You can't just multiply it, but sure you can. Because what's 3 over 3? Isn't it just 1? So 1 times 1/2 is still 1/2. I haven't changed the problem. If you multiply it by something that changes the problem, well, that's bad because now it's no longer the original problem. All right, so it's 3 over 3, and then, again, 1/3. How do you get 3 to be 6? Multiply it by 2. So 2 on the bottom, well, of course, we're going to multiply it by 2 on the top. It's always going to be the same number on the top and the bottom. That's easy. Now I multiply these together, and I get 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. So 3 6 plus 2 times 1 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. So now my answer is 5 over 6. It's really pretty easy to do this. But you follow this rule and don't make it complicated, and you're going to be good to go. All right, so let's try a few more examples here. 4 over 9 plus 2 over, let's just say 2 over 7. Now that looks kind of nasty because you're like, geez, what number does 9 and 7 go into? Well, they actually don't go into anything until, and I guess the smallest number or the number that always works is by multiplying those two numbers together. So if I multiply 9 times 7, I get 63. So my LCD for this one is 63. Well, we're going to multiply, how do we get that to be 63? Well, you just told me it was 7, so I multiply it by 7 over 7. And how do I get that one to be 63? Well, 9 over 9. So that you get 28 over 63 plus 18 over 63. And 28 and 18 is 46 over 63. And that, they're both not even numbers, and 46 over 63 cannot be reduced. So that's your final answer. Okay? You kind of get to know if you can reduce something a little bit. You look at, are they both even numbers? If they're both even numbers, then definitely you can take a 2 out of there. If they're not even numbers, then you look for, a 3 is a little more difficult. 5s are easy. 7s are more challenging. 9s are more challenging. 11s, etc. to look to see if you can simplify it. Okay? All right, so let's try another one here. 1/6 plus 2/9. All right, so yeah, you can multiply 6 times 9, but think about it, guys. What does 6 kind of work your way up? 6 times 2 is 12. No, 9 doesn't go into 12. 6 times 3 is 18. Oh, 9 times 2 is 18. So my LCD is 18. So you're going to multiply this one by 3 over 3 and this one by 2 over 2. So you get 3 over 18 plus 4 over 18, which is 7 over 18. All right, see, it really is pretty simple. Just kind of follow that rule. All right, so let's try a couple of even negative ones here. What if I said negative 2 15ths minus, let's say plus 3/10. Okay, looks brutal, but notice that 15 and that 10, right? It's 5 kind of goes into that. So they have something in common. Now don't say the LCD is 5 because 15 doesn't go into 5. 5 goes into 15. I need to make it a bigger number. You never make it a smaller number than what it is right there. It's always got to be a bigger number. Or maybe the same number. Okay, anyway, if I multiply 15 times 2, I get 30. Oh, 10 goes into 30 also. Okay, sweet. LCD is 30. So you're going to multiply this one by 2 over 2 and this one by 3 over 3. So I get negative 4 over 30 plus 9 over 30. So you know the bottom's going to be 30, and the deal is, it's like the old days. It's saying negative 4 plus 9. All they're opposite signs. You subtract. 9 minus 4 is 5. What's the sign of the bigger number? Positive. So it's going to be 5 over 30. Now you're not done, because you again should recognize, oh, I have a 5 and I have a 30, so I can reduce 5 over 30. 5 goes into 5 one time. 5 goes into 30 6 times. So my answer is 1/6. Okay, it's not too bad. What about negative 1 over 12 minus, what do we do here? Minus 1/4. How's that? All right. What's your LCD? Well, 12 goes into 12 and 4 goes into 12, so my LCD is 12. Well, that means I don't need to multiply this one by anything, because it's already got my LCD. This one I got to multiply by 3 over 3. So I now have negative 1/12 minus 3/12. Same sign. I know I'm going to have a 12 on the bottom, so I'm just going to write it in there. Same sign. You add them together. 3 plus 1 is 4. And it's negative, so it's negative 4. And then, of course, you should know 4 goes into 4 1, so it's negative 1, and 4 goes into 12 3 times. So the answer is negative 1/3. Okay? That is pretty mellow. Let's try a problem here that uses starts out with mixed numbers. So negative 2 2/3 minus 4 1/9. All right, so just like you did with multiplication, if you have mixed fractions, you want to turn them into improper. Okay, that's important because it's really difficult to deal with that because you're kind of carrying, you're borrowing. It's just not an easy thing to do if they're mixed numbers. Okay, so I'm going to turn this. It's going to be negative. Let's see, 3 times 2 is 6 plus 2 is 8, so it's negative 8/3. And then 36 or 4 times 9 is 36 plus 1 is 37, so minus 37/9. Now we get our LCD, in fact, this case here, it's kind of nice. LCD is 9. Sweet. That second term's good. This one I need to multiply by 3/3. So I get negative 24/9 minus 37/9. Okay? And you remember our rule, if it's the same sign, you say 37 plus 24, which is 61. So, and then it's negative because the sign of the bigger number is negative. So it's negative 61/9. Okay? And you cannot reduce that at all, so that is your final answer. Okay, again, I don't want a mixed number. I want an improper fraction for a final answer. Okay, so that's pretty much it. The last thing I want to show you guys is decimals, which you guys really should know how to do decimals. Decimals are just as easy as whole numbers, especially adding and subtracting. You just kind of line things up. So, for example, if I gave you 4.63 minus 7.21, okay, don't write it up and down and say 4.63 minus 7.21. That's actually really complicated to do to come up with your answer. Follow the rules as we learned before with positive and negative numbers. Oh, opposite signs. We subtract big minus small. So 7.21 minus 4.63. Okay, so 1 minus 3 is 8, and we borrowed 1. 2 minus 6 is 6, and we borrowed 1, so it's 5. And 7 minus 4 is 3, but we borrowed 1, it's 2. So it's 2.58. And what's the sign of the bigger number? It's negative. So we put the negative on the outside there, and that's our final answer. Okay, but you need to write it, when you're working with decimals, guys, you need to really write it vertically. Vertically is up and down. Okay, and then you're going to be a lot more successful. So let's do one more decimal problem here. What if I said 3.68 minus 7.21 minus 8.56? All right, well, order of operation, we're going to go left to right. So we're going to do this first, and then we're going to subtract 8.56. So remember, opposite signs, so we subtract 7.21 minus 3.68. 1 minus 8, borrow 1, so it's a 3. 2 minus 6, 2 minus 6 is 6, borrow 1, we get 5. And 7 minus 3 is 4, we borrowed 1, so it's 3. So it's 3.53. Of course, the bigger number is negative, so it's negative 3.53. All right, and then what we do is we subtract 8.56. So we can even just write it out here. Let's write it out. So it's negative 3.53 minus 8.56. And we know that when they're the same sign, we add them together. So it's 3.53 plus 8.56. So much easier to do addition and subtraction when the bigger number, well, subtraction definitely when the bigger number is on top. Otherwise, it's pretty impossible to do that. All right, so 3 plus 6 is 9. 5 plus 5 is 0. Carry the 1. 8 plus 3 is 11. Plus 1 is 12. So it's 12.09. They're both negative. The bigger number is negative. So the answer to this one is negative 12.09. All right. So it's not that bad. Just got to be really careful with your adding and subtracting. No calculator, though. All right. You got to do this kind of in your own brain a little bit, but it's not too bad. All right. That's it, math fans. You have a great day. Goodbye.